Underground. 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 Underground.
Greetings, surface dwellers. My name is Michael, and these are my chthonic musings. Today's video is going to be part 2 of combat for the Dragonbane game by Free League, actions and movement. I hope you enjoy it. Actions and movement. On your turn in the round, you can move and perform one action. You simply explain how you want to move and what action you want to perform. If necessary, you also roll dice to see whether you succeed. You decide whether to move before you act or vice versa. You can even use part of your movement, perform your action, and then finish the movement. Actions. An action in combat can be many different things, but the list below summarizes the most common ones. These actions are described in detail later in this chapter. Free actions. Minor actions such as drawing a weapon kept at hand, dropping to the ground, or shouting a few words are all free actions. See the sidebar on the next page for a complete list. Free actions do not count as your action in the round, but you can only perform one of each type per round, and only on your own turn. For example, you can drop down or get up on your turn, but not both. Reactions. Some actions are not performed on your turn, but on the opponent's. These are called reactions, and include things like parrying or dodging attacks. This uses up your own turn in the round, which means that you cannot perform a reaction if you've already had your turn and performed an action. Flip your initiative card after performing a reaction. When performing a reaction, you also lose your movement in the round. Several reactions, such as dodging or parrying, give you a certain movement as part of the action. You can read more about this under melee combat on page 45. Movement. Under normal circumstances, you can move as many meters as your movement rate, but there are a few special cases to consider. Dash. By choosing to dash as your action in the round, you can move twice as far as normal. Stand, crouch. You can drop to the ground or get up as part of your movement. These are free actions and do not affect your movement per se, but can only be done on your turn. Leaping. As part of your movement, you can make a horizontal leap as long as half your movement rate with a successful acrobatics roll. If the distance is a quarter of your movement rate or less, you don't need to roll to leap it. Door. Passing through a closed but unlocked door costs half your movement in the round. If you cannot move any further, you remain standing by the now open door. A locked door must either be picked, open, or broken down. Enemies. You cannot move past a standing enemy who wants to stop you. A humanoid creature of human size can block an area of roughly 2 by 2 meters. Monsters can block larger areas. To move past an enemy who is blocking the way, you must first bring it to the ground or reduce its hit points to 0. Friendly individuals can be passed without any problem. Free attack. If you are standing within 2 meters of an enemy and then move away from that enemy, you must make an evade roll. The roll does not count as an action, but if it fails, the enemy immediately gets to perform an additional melee attack against you, a free attack. the free attack does not count as an action and can neither be parried nor dodged. A monster that gets a free attack performs a monster attack, page 83, which also may affect other characters. Note that a free attack is triggered even if you start your movement at a distance but pass by an enemy. Moving around an enemy does not trigger a free attack as long as you stay within 2 meters. Sneak attack. The key to winning a conflict is often to attack when the enemy least expects it. Sneak attack. When you sneak up on someone undetected and perform an attack, it is called a sneak attack. First, you make a sneaking roll. Moving close enough to attack in melee combat, within 2 meters for most weapons, gives you a bane. If you fail, the enemy notices you. Draw initiative. If you succeed, your attack counts as surprising, which means that you can choose any initiative card you want. You also get a boon on the attack, and the target can neither dodge nor parry. Using a subtle weapon increases the damage by 1 die, for example 2d8 instead of d8. Sneak attacks are always performed individually by 1 attacker against 1 target. Ambush. A special kind of sneak attack is an ambush, lying in wait for an enemy and attacking as it passes by. In this case, each victim makes an awareness roll to spot the ambush, with a bane if the attackers are well prepared. All those who fail get the bottom cards, counting from number 10 and up, randomly drawn. Flip the initiative card. Once you have had your turn in the round, you can flip the initiative card face down to make it clear to you and everyone else that you have acted. This means that you cannot perform any reaction, such as parrying an attack, later in the round. There is a sidebar on page 44 of the rulebook called Combat Maps, which I will not read in its entirety, but basically says that you can do combat, entirely in your imagination, often called, theater of the mind, or you can use you do combat on a grid, and it goes over a little bit, the fact that the box core set of Dragonbane comes with cardboard standees with, plastic bases and such. But I will read the final part, which says 5-foot squares. If you are used to combat maps with 5 by 5 foot squares, and perhaps even own a bunch of such maps, you can easily use them in Dragonbane. Just use the 5 by 5 foot squares as if they were 2 by 2 meters. It will not affect anything in the game. Terrain. The terrain where the fighting takes place can affect your movement and actions. Maps usually show what type of terrain is found in different areas. Cramped. There is little space or a low ceiling. All melee weapons except piercing weapons, page 73, and subtle weapons get a bane on all rolls. Rough. The terrain is difficult to traverse. Whenever you move, you must make an acrobatics roll, not an action. Failure means that you fall over and lose the rest of your movement this round. Dimly lit. Imposes a bane on all ranged attacks. Riding animals. A loyal horse or some other mount is a great asset to any adventurer. Different types of pack animals and riding animals are listed on page 81, and their stats are found on page 99. Saddlebags. The gear lists specify how many units of weight the animal can carry. Movement. While mounted, you travel twice as fast as on foot, roughly 30 kilometers per shift, page 7. All player characters are assumed to be able to get up on a horse and ride slowly, but for more advanced maneuvers, a roll for riding is required. Combat. In order to fight on horseback, your mount must be combat trained. You may then move at your mount's movement rate instead of your own. On horseback, you fight as usual, but all attacks and parries use the lowest of your riding skill and the weapon skill. Also, riding replaces evade when on horseback. If you don't have a saddle, all rolls get a bane. Enemies attacking you must choose whether they target you or your mount. Melee attacks from the ground get a bane against you. Damage. Mounts heal hit points, just like player characters. A mount that reaches 0 hit points does not make death rolls, but simply dies. Improvised weapons. Battles are sometimes fought in places where things in the environment can be used in combat, as weapons for protection or for movement. These improvised weapons can be lots of different things, but what they all have in common is that they normally can only be used once, after which they are consumed. Using an improvised weapon is an action and can be combined with movement. Examples of improvised weapons can be found on playing cards in this box. At the start of combat, the GM can draw D3 cards to see which improvised weapons are available, or simply decide for themselves. The GM can mark an improvised weapon's exact location on the map, or say that it is available anywhere in the area. The playing cards are placed on the table where everyone can see them. Once used, an improvised weapon is consumed and the card is removed. Complete adventures can feature new and unique improvised weapons that are connected to a certain adventure site. And so, until I resurface, may your successes be many and your failures be memorable.